Well, it's all gone well for Everton and for Carlo Ancelotti so far this season, wins in their opening 2 games. One of the things that I read about Everton was a comment from a fan who said, Everton look like fun. Yeah. Fun is so underrated in football. Not by you. No, you're saying this to the wrong person.
We have fun. We have fun. Me and Mike have fun. But, you know, it's taken its time to get to where they are now. And Mashiri, as we've seen, Mashiri, he's not afraid to put his money where his mouth is, and he's done that. And I think that this time, it seems like it's aligned for what he's done. I think the signing of James Rodriguez, because obviously of Ancelotti and it could be it. When you see the emergence of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Richarlison, you know, people who turn their noses up when he went for the 40 million from Watford. You know what I mean? Obviously, they lost that Idrissa Gueye. So, you know what I mean? You're thinking, oh, my gosh, what they're going to... Now they've got 2 players in there, in Allen and Decore, with James in front, where you're now saying, OK, Everton, I get it now. Obviously, I'm going to have to talk about their goalkeeper at some stage, but I don't want to go negative. But at the same time, they're on very much the right track. Everything was going on outside the football. Yeah. So, you know, it's really exciting for them. And they're a team that you can't help but like. You like Everton. I like Everton. It was always nicer. They were always nicer to me than Liverpool. You know, you kind of don't wish bad on them. And now you feel like, OK, they've got Ancelotti in with a big man. Let's see what he does. And we're seeing the beginnings of something that could be pretty cool.
Just want to pick up on that point you made about the timing of all of this with Darren, because this is Everton, if they're going to get it right, they have to get it right now, not when they're in the midst of building a new stadium.
What's quite interesting is that if you look at Manchester City, I was thinking of Manchester, where the money came in, Sheikh Mansour, but for a few years they couldn't quite get it right. You know, they brought players in, good players in, but they didn't quite have the right manager. They always were falling a bit short. And then it clicked, and then they were a juggernaut, they were a monster. And you're right, the team has to be doing well before you start talking about moving to big stadium. Football history, we've seen so many clubs move to new stadiums, but the team aren't worth a lick. But Everton, they are quality. And there are a couple of themes through our conversation. The most important person at that football club right now is that man behind us, because I think you look at the players that he's brought to the club. Allen, he's played with, he's managed before.
Napoli, yeah.
James Rodriguez, he's now scored in 4 of Europe's top 5 leagues, all under Ancelotti each time. You look at his performance since he arrived. People thought he was a busted flush, and already his numbers are off the scale. He makes goals, he takes goals. He is a guy who's going to get the best out of the front two. And if you look at Calvert-Lewin as well, 6 goals in the 3 seasons beforehand, 13 goals last season. I would say when you talk about coaching, we were talking about Ollie and who has he improved? You look at Calvert-Lewin, he's a perfect example of coaching. A guy goes in, gives a player the confidence and the ability to make runs, to finish ruthlessly, and to force himself into a conversation about England that he previously wasn't in. You guys have played under guys who give you that kind of confidence. I look at Ancelotti and I think if they're going to get it right now, it will be because of him.
Yeah, and for 2 reasons, as you said there. One is the players who are coming in. We will talk more about James because we can talk about him for a long time. Yeah. But also the players that have improved even before Ancelotti went big in the transfer market, like Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And I'm mentioning him because I know you like him.
Yeah, and he was somebody that used to get quite a lot of criticism. Oh, he doesn't score enough, he doesn't do enough in the box, he doesn't hold it up well enough. And we're talking about a young player, you know what I mean? He's got pedigree, especially with England. And when you look at what I've noticed with him is that he doesn't need to take... That's a fantastic header. It's all about the one-touch finish in the box. He's getting in there, and it's all about he's finishing quickly. And when you look at someone like how Ancelotti's coached him, it's the same as what he's done with Inzaghi. He talked about Inzaghi. I think Inzaghi's scored something like 210 goals, one touches in the box. And what I'm noticing is the pattern with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Look how hard he's getting in across there. That's the kind of goal.
What's he telling him? That's the difference between what Silva.
Look where he is. If you look at him all the time, in between the posts. And that's what you're noticing. Remember, I mentioned Martial, everything's outside there. When you look at Dominic Calvert-Lewin and in the box and whatever Everton's doing, he's right in and around that middle bit there.
How good is he, though? Right.
You know, the thing is...
Yeah, how good can he be, though?
You know, the thing with him is that in this system, fantastic, and the way they're playing. Of course, you want to, you know, and now he's going to have someone like James Rodriguez linking him up now. We're going to see maybe more in his link-up play. But in respects of what he can do holding up, finishing in the box, he could be whatever he wants.
When you're a striker, I remember last time I was here, I talked to you about Bergkamp. When you're a striker and Hammers comes in, who makes the decisions about where to play? Do you make it with your run, or does he say, look, I'm going to be slotting it through there, you need to find yourself in that position?
No, when you're playing with that caliber of player, you kind of like, you make sure you go off of what they're doing. because the good thing about playing with players of that caliber is they can recognise the move and when you've got the space. So if I make a move like this, then Dennis will know that then he could play in that side. Players like that, they play in the side where the defender can't touch you. They play it in the side to your strongest foot. They see the stuff, and then obviously it works in training. You start doing it in training where he starts to figure out, and because they're quality players, they figure out what he likes and things like that. So that just comes. It comes like naturally to players of that caliber. And you look at Everton and you look at James Rodriguez. I know we're talking about Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but quickly, is that he's been at Real Madrid and Bayern Munich and that. He's the kind of player that is not quite at the level where they can build a team around him, but Everton can. And that is where I think that they've really hit the nail.
That's quite key, Everton. If I bet just one last quick bit before we move on.
We've got plenty of pictures of him.
Oh, great. Okay, well then
look at this.
I was reading a piece about Thiago, actually, and about the way that Thiago, in training, will be testing the touch of the players around him with these balls out wide.
Roy Keane used to do that as well.
Exactly. And I'm thinking, when you look at Rodriguez, he clearly knows the players who can cope with the weight of pass, with the through balls, who can read what he's about to do. He had a hand in 3 of the 5 goals and scored one himself the other day. And it just looks as though he's added that X factor to that final third.
It's also in terms of people wanting to come to the club as well. In 2008, we had a takeover at Manchester City, and Robinho was the first come from Real Madrid. And he was still a top player.
Yeah.
We didn't get the best out of him because he wasn't playing with good enough players around him. But what it did is it propelled us it took us into a different market. And I think that's what James Rodriguez have done for Everton.
That's interesting, because what does that do to the rest of the squad?
Because it lifts them, but also it's a revolving door. So every transfer window, there's new players coming in. And a lot of people talk about Vincent Kompany and Zabaleta, but they was there before all the money was there. And Zabaleta actually played centre midfield, and everyone knows him as a right back. But the better players that came in, the better they looked, and the easier their role was for them as well. So I just think with him signing for Everton, and don't forget Ancelotti as well, them two together, it's just mad. Look at Alan. Alan, the midfielder, he's incredible. I used to watch him at Napoli many a times, and they've took the transfers to the next level. And when you've got someone like him in the team, it's only a matter of time before they get more quality.
And then you look at, like you mentioned, Alan and Decore. And when you looked at some of those clips of James there, just the way where he popped up, he cannot be challenged. Because that's how good they are. That's what they get themselves in a position where by the time you get to them, they've already popped the ball off, and some of the passes there were brilliant. And that now, for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Richarlison, who both of them can be very, very dangerous. And with him behind them, honestly, they can really cause problems now.
It's funny, isn't it? Because Michael Keane looked like a little bit of a liability for a little while. Alan and Decore, they're the kind of players, they get centre-halves a £20 million move. Because they are so protective of the back four. I do think, sadly, we do have to talk about the goalkeeper. Because if we're going to be critical of De Gea and critical of Kepa, then we have to be just as critical of Pickford. And I think Pickford is making too many mistakes for a club that aspires to be in the top 6. And so he has a decision to make about Pickford. Does he stick with him, or does he go out and get another more reliable goalkeeper?
And then you look at Lossell, like Lossell is there from Huddersfield. He's done pretty well. 10 clean sheets in his time. And again, I don't know how I deal with being a number 2 goalkeeper, because you're watching the number 1 mess up on a regular basis, and you're still not getting a look in. So I think that it's the kind of thing, again, it's going to be interesting to watch how Lossell continues to progress at Everton, because they've got a goalkeeper who I feel will cost them at some stage.
It's a big decision for Ancelotti, though, because everything you hear about him is that he's a real players manager. He's somebody who kind of knows the players and takes them in as whole people, as you like, rather than just machines that he puts to work. And if he does drop Jordan Pickford, if he isn't his #1 goalkeeper, that could be his England career at risk as well.
Yeah, it's a tough decision, isn't it? But I watched him in the cup against Fleetwood, and he was awful. It really was. It was at fault for the first goal when the ball come back to him. Just kick it long. People are trying to play out from the back too much now, even when it's not on. And it's costing him. If he kicks the ball up 40, 50 yards at the field, no one says anything to him, you know what I mean? And I actually spoke to him during a lockdown, and he's a confident lad, and I will always back him no matter what. But if he wants to be a top keeper, he's got to realise these mistakes, you've got to cut them out now. And he's had more than enough opportunities to prove his worth. But if he keeps making these mistakes, a decision's going to have to be made sooner rather than later.
You know,
Sorry, Darren. Sorry. Sorry. Try not to have eyes in the back of my head. I'm so sorry.
I was about to ask about Joe Hart because he did get dropped, and Pep was very decisive about bringing in another goalkeeper. I think it was Claudio Brava he brought in at the time, and then obviously he dropped him and brought in Edison.
Yeah.
Because again, when you talk about decisiveness, if you're going to win things, there isn't that room for sentiment.
Yes.
You know, you have to say that you have made too many mistakes, and you know, I think of Danny Rose in Jose Mourinho's office in the Amazon documentary saying, hang on a minute, I'm not playing and you've got all these guys making mistakes. That was what I thought of when you were talking about being a #2 goalkeeper. Yeah. But I think it goes even further than that. I think, given the aspiration, given the question you posed, Kelly, about they've made so many mistakes in the transfer market, they've fallen short so many times, does it have to happen now? If it does, they've got to get a new goalkeeper.
We have to say as well with like Chelsea. See, Chelsea's made the decision now. Mendy's come in from Rennes, and you know, we're talking about a goalkeeper that broke the world goalkeeping record in Kepa, but they've realised, and you have to be decisive, they've realised that we can't continue. If we're going to try and challenge, we can't do it with that goalkeeper. So they're going to have to write off a lot of money, but the decision has to be made. Someone has to make it.
Kepa he put the pressure on himself, though, because you remember what happened in the cup game? You know what I mean? When he's throwing his... You know what I mean?
When he wouldn't come off, it didn't help him. Didn't help him
at all. And if you're going to act like that, you've got to back it up on the field. Yes. And you know what it's like in this world. Football waits for no one. As soon as you made that mistake, it turns into one, turns into two. All the history of you know, his attitude and what he did that day gets brought up, and you know, he's going to have to deal with that now.
Interesting that with Chelsea making the move, he's not coming for very, relatively speaking, very much money, has he, Mendy? Is it, what, 22 million?
£22 million.
Yeah, and so it shows that they're out there. The grand scheme of things in what clubs are spending, that seems affordable for Everton if they want to upgrade their goalkeeper.
Oh, I remember when Manchester City signed Edison for £35 million, and a friend of mine said, "Do they think he's a striker?" but you know that there is value out there because he's proven every inch that a £35 million player, double that, you could argue. I think as far as Mendy is concerned, he's 28, he's Senegal goalkeeper, he's 6'6", he's a fantastic shot stopper. He's authoritative in the box, and they drove a hard bargain, Rennes, because he was a popular figure at the club. You know, he was somebody who earned his place on merit and retained it for quite some time. And he's the complete opposite to Kepa. Kepa looks like his confidence is shot to pieces, like he is affected by everything that happened last season. There are clips on social media of the players basically demanding that he take charge in the 6-yard box, and he seems incapable of doing that. And so suddenly Lampard can start to focus on what he wants to do, knowing that he has somebody that he has confidence in goal, and defensively they look stronger. I think if you're looking at Everton, you can't yet do that if Pickford is making mistakes. That's not personal about Pickford. It is just the business of football.
It does seem that Pickford is a particularly for a goalkeeper, he's a real confidence player. There've been times you've seen sometimes the crowd might get on his back and you see him maybe rush out and make an error, or he just seems to be knocked off track quite easily. Yeah,
the focus. I think I remember watching him when he's playing for Sunderland against Newcastle, and you know how intense that is for them. And I found that he made a couple of mistakes in that game, and I found that for a goalkeeper, you know, of his quality at the state at that time, he was too easily distracted from what he's meant to do. And I remember, you know, even with Joe Hart, I remember watching Joe Hart in the tunnel when we were about to play Wales, and I remember saying again, that goalkeeper's too wound up, he's too intense. And I always bring it back to Dave Seaman, how calm he was all the time. And it's no surprise to me that everybody in our team was calm. We were always calm because he was very in control. And you look at like the way Jordan Pickford is, and you look at the way Joe Hart was in that particular, and they were too intense, and that worried me. And it worries me with Jordan Pickford because he seems to be worried about so many other things instead of what he's actually meant to be doing.
I think it's social media though, Ian, as well. You know, when I was first coming through, it was papers, you know, you're looking through, marking the papers. What was Darren giving me? He's only giving me a 5. But now, Twitter can destroy someone's confidence like that. You could not even be looking for something.
Yeah, they could put piece
and it just pops up.
Piece all the stuff
You know
together.
what I mean? And I feel like sometimes, especially with Joe Hart, I don't know Pickford too well. He let that side of him get to him a little bit, and it felt as though he had to act a certain way, or maybe put on a little bit of persona, or a little bit of a show to people to say, and they're not actually concentrating on what they're supposed to be doing.
Why are players still looking at? I can never understand why players are looking at social media. Because I remember I interviewed this guy. It was a gymnast actually, ahead of London 2012, and he said, "Look, 2 months, 3 months before I perform, I never look at social media because one comment out of place can affect your confidence. And yet you guys are coming into your dressing room and looking straight at social media, knowing that there are people who will just
be hammering you.
Presumably, even if they didn't look, somebody would tell them.
That's what I mean, yeah. You know, you got
it.
your friends. We're all in a group chat with our friends. Oh, you didn't have a very good game. Or look what they're saying about you. You know, you
I thought such and such was out of order.
Yeah, it's just, you know, so I didn't want to see that. Such as
Yeah, that's what it does.
And it's just no matter how you try hide it, unless you don't have a phone or you don't, you know, you don't have any contact with anybody, you will see it somewhere. You know, even indirectly. You manage to...
But also, presumably, footballers are on social media for the same reasons that the rest of us are as well, which is to follow news stories and to get feedback.
Yeah, but,
not just about themselves.
No,
it's not just an ego trip.
No, it's not just an ego trip. But at the same time, you know, for whatever happens, you always want, for some reason, it's almost like the scab that's not ready. You know what I mean? You kind of pick at it because you feel... I wonder what they're saying. You can't help that. It's very difficult to know that something's out there, and I remember I've come from before Michael. It was all about the papers and you finding out what they're saying. And Graham Taylor used to say, "Do not read them." I don't know how I'd get on in this time because it's so readily out there. You cannot actually get away from it. I feel for the players right now.
Yeah, and like we say, it can have a detrimental effect on their confidence, which is what. We don't know that that's what's been happening with Jordan Pickford, but we have seen that his performances have dropped off. It is only one of the few low points. It's not even, you know, it's one of the few concerns for Everton in terms of how they approach this season, because everything else just seems to be slotting into place perfectly, doesn't it?
Honestly, it looks like a different team. They've won 4 out of 4. I think they go into the weekend's game with confidence sky high. But although it's the only thing, it's a key thing, isn't it? Because I think if the other areas of the team are functioning well, but you've got a goalkeeper whose mistake, and I think back to Kepa, because I was at Chelsea against Crystal Palace. Chelsea scored a couple of goals early and they were cruising. Kepa makes a mistake and suddenly they're scrambling for the points, and that's how quickly it can turn. And I think there is the potential for that to happen with Pickford this season, and it could destabilise them.
It's quite interesting. The way that you're talking suggests that this could almost be one of those key moments for Everton in terms of what their future looks like. With all the development coming up, with the outlay there's going to be from that, it's stick or twist with Jordan Pickford, and that could be what the next few years hinges on for them.
Well, it's all about that decisive decision again, isn't it? Because, like we said, we mentioned Kepa, and £71 million. Chelsea have just literally bought another goalkeeper because they thought, we're not going to twist with this. We're gonna go.
No,
it's fine.
We're not going to
stick.
stick with this. We're going to twist with this simply because.
Don't play pontoon.
Yeah.
Do you?
That's really good. No, I don't actually. No. But like, it's like I agree with Darren in the sense of if they're going to where they want to go, at some stage that decision is going to have to be made. They're going to have to get that goalkeeper in because can you imagine that everything's working on a pitch? James Rodriguez, like you mentioned, they attract those players, and then you still got the goalkeeper what's kind of dragging you back. The decision will be made.
Liverpool threw Mignolet overboard because when it came to the crunch, they could have won the Champions League and didn't because the goalkeeper was the weakest link. Karius as well. I mean, I think when you have a goalkeeper that exudes the kind of confidence, Schmeichel, when you played against him, there are so many goalkeepers that we can think of who, as a last line of defence, were just so good that they gave the confidence to the rest of the team to go out and play. And Pickford isn't that guy right now.
We don't know if Everton are in for a goalkeeper, but let's do sort of predictions. But let's talk about what their future could look like this season, with and without Jordan Pickford. If they stick, what could happen? If they twist, what could happen?
Look, I don't want to write him off just now because we mentioned Joe Hart before. I thought he actually got replaced a little bit too soon because he didn't show him what, he always made a decision. He can't play with his feet. With Pickford, he is making too many mistakes, but if you're going to replace him, you've got to get a top goalkeeper. You can't be messing around. You mentioned Losland. Yeah, he's a good keeper, but he's at Huddersfield. You know what I mean? If they want to be going
You'd be
top
busy
6,
then.
25, yeah, top 6, top 4. Look, I think Everton, I'm going to say Everton 6th.
Okay.
7th.
Should be
6th and 7th, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Challenging for that, especially when we don't know who else they're going to buy because you feel that Everton will buy again. And if they have that kind of season where it feels like they might have, they've got the stellar player, they've got a young forward on top form, then I think they've probably they've got to be getting into Europe without a shadow of a doubt with what they're doing with the outlay.
Oh, yeah, I'd agree with that. I think what the club are doing is they're backing Ancelotti, and Ancelotti's being very clever about his signings. He's going for players he's worked with before. So it wouldn't surprise me if he were to go for a goalkeeper he's worked with before, that he has confidence in. But if they do get another goalkeeper, 6, maybe higher. If they don't get a goalkeeper, 7th.
There'll be some big-name teams dropping out of the top 6 if Everton make it into there. Mind you, Everton, a big-name team in themselves, who are very much on the up. It's all feeling very positive around Everton, despite maybe a few bumps along the road. Coming up next,